Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review, and it's a review of a house that honestly, in my opinion, deserves much more love and talk and affection in Fragcom. The house is called Santa Maria Novella, and the fragrance we're going to talk about today is from 2002, and it's called Nostalgia. Now, if you take a look at the bottle, I think this is a pretty cool old school bottle from Santa Maria Novella. This is not their normal bottle type, if you will, but the attention to detail of this house is something that I really, really rate because if you take a look, they're kind of an old school. Well, they consider themselves to be one of the oldest houses in existence. So they claim that they go all the way back to 1221 when a monastery was basically founded in Florence. And so this is an Italian house that is creating a fragrance in homage to Italian sports cars, okay? So you think about the Ferraris, you think about the Lambos, you think about the Maseratis, right? And that is exactly what this is kind of going after. And again, if you take a look at the cover right here, it looks like a man who I assume is an old man because nostalgia, you have to have some years under your belt to kind of have nostalgia. The young kid is just living day to day. The old man is not just living day to day, but also has all of the experience that he accumulated throughout his life. And it almost looks like he's gripping this steering wheel. And there's the windshield right here, and there's the Santa Maria Novella symbol. So very cool packaging. The original Santa Maria Novella bottles, most of them nowadays basically look like this, which I think is just a classy presentation in and of itself anyway. So this is Peau d'Espagne. You'll be hearing more about this very soon. But so today we're going to talk about nostalgia, okay? And nostalgia is, like I said, a very interesting, unique, artistic fragrance. It's basically a great example of the reason that I did this channel, okay? It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this channel, because you could pull up the newest, I don't know, bullshit flanker from YSL, the Elixir, and you probably see 10,000 reviews already, or whatever niche house is sending out free bottles, or whatever clone house is sending out free bottles, commodity line, or whatever the hell it is, right? And so these type of fragrances, though, don't get talked because these type of fragrances, you actually have to spend your own time and money investing in getting to know the fragrance, wearing the fragrance, finding it, researching it, learning about it. It's not something that's just going to get pushed in your face. It's not the newest hype beast, but it is for the hardcore frag connoisseurs, if you will. That's the way that I look at this house and these type of fragrances in general. So nostalgia to me is very interesting. It's a very interesting scent. I'm going to do a fresh spray, by the way, because I want to experience that amazing opening again. Oh, man. So, okay, so you guys know I'm a leather lover. This is a leather-based scent, but it's done in a way that I've never smelled a leather scent open like this. So this basically opens up with a blast of what smells to me like glue. Almost like you would expect like super glue meets hot glue. It's almost like you're literally in the factory while they're making this high-end Italian sports car. And you're smelling all of the machinery, the welding, the epoxy, the paint. It's like you're literally smelling the paint on the car getting put on. And just imagine taking that paint and primer mix and kind of mixing it together with the smell of leather. High-end Italian sports car leather, okay? And if you've ever sat in like a Maserati or a Lambo or a Ferrari, those type of cars, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The leather feels on another level. And that's what this leather scent is sort of trying to emulate. But in the opening, it's done maybe in the most artistic way ever because it almost smells like you're smelling a mixture of Dior's Fahrenheit, because there's a little bit of this gasoline note coming through here, but it smells nothing like Fahrenheit. But it's the only way I can describe to you the fuel note in a way that I think you would understand it if you've never smelled this scent before. So imagine you kind of took a little bit of Fahrenheit and you ran it through a machine in a way where it just completely changed the way that the fuel scent smells. So instead of that gasoline, like straight from the fuel pump gasoline that you get from Fahrenheit, this smells almost more like exhaust. It's almost literally like the exhaust coming out the back of the car, okay? And what's crazy about the opening, already it's changed drastically. So what did I spray this? A minute ago? 2 minutes ago? And it's drastically changed. So the first minute is gasoline, glue, car grease, burning tires. You know, you think about burning rubber. It is if you've ever had a garage that just came, if you ever built a house and it just came with a basic garage that didn't have sort of the floor, the epoxy floor to protect it, and then you decided, you know what, it's probably smart to put down that epoxy floor to protect the garage floor, so you end up putting it down, and you know, some company comes out and does it for you. There's ways you can do it yourself, but let's say a company comes out and does it for you, and that epoxy type coating that they put over the garage floor, depending on whether it is high end or one of the cheaper ways to go about it. The cheaper ways actually smell worse. So if you get sort of a cheap epoxy put out over your garage floor, it'll actually smell worse than the more expensive ways to do it. But either way, epoxy is going to stink in one way or another. So when you have that coating put on the floor, there is this smell that emanates, and it lasts for, when it's new, it's there the strongest, but you can sometimes even still smell it weeks after. And there's a little bit of that in there, like you're literally standing in the garage with the mechanic, or maybe with just some old timer who loves his cars, right? And he's the kind of guy that has his hands dirty. There's grease on his hands. You know, it's grease, it's glue, it's oil, it's fumes, it's burnt rubber, it's the wood from the steering wheel, because there is a wood note in here, and of course it is leather. And so here's the note listing on Nostalgia, by the way. It is leather, birch, patchouli, styrax, tobacco, bergamot, Virginia cedar, woody notes, lemon, musk, petit grain, vanilla, amber. That musk, Fragrantica and Parfumo disagree on. So Fragrantica lists it as musk malo or ambrette, and Parfumo just says musk. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But what's crazy is, so already, like I said, a minute or two in, this is, maybe one of the fastest changing openings I've ever smelled. It hits you in a way where, you know, it's almost like you're at a NASCAR race and the cars are just flying by so fast, and you know, you look and all of a sudden they're gone. The opening just kind of comes and it just is on you, and then it's gone, and it changes so quickly. And what it ends up changing to is, it changes from that almost literally, like I said, super glue, like you opened up the super glue container and smelled it, and leather and gasoline, and it begins to change to something a little bit greener. A little bit of patchouli comes in, a little bit more texture starts to get into the fragrance. But what ends up happening is a lot of two notes come to my nose. Number one is amber. Amber makes the fragrance a little bit softer, and it kind of rounds everything out. And the other note that really starts to come in big doses is vanilla. So I've never seen a fragrance open up so bold, and not that it dries down boring, because you can still smell some of these ingredients. The leather, the birch adds a little bit of smokiness to it, almost like the car is burning just a little bit of oil, you know what I mean? There's a little bit of that smokiness to it. Or maybe when he really punches on the gas, a little bit of smoke comes out the back of the exhaust. There's a little bit of that. But the patchouli adds a little bit of greenness. The vanilla and the amber just kind of round everything out. It begins to make it smoother, almost like you started from outside of the car and you're smelling the exhaust. Let's say there's a setup where they've got like a catless downpipe or something on the car, and so you're smelling the exhaust coming out. There's no catalytic converter or whatever it is, right? So you start on the outside and you get all of these fumes and heavy notes hitting you in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you get into the car and it begins to, you start to see the luxurious aspects of the car. It's not just the horsepower and the raw power of the car. It's also quickly begins to open up and give you some of those unique, more luxurious feels. And that's where I think the vanilla and the amber really start to make an appearance. They say there's things like lemon and petit grain in the top, which I did a orange blossom and I did a neroli video. One day I'll do a petit grain video focusing just on that note, but all three of those, from my understanding, come from the bitter orange tree. It's just the different parts of the tree and how they're process. The petit grain is mostly the twigs and sticks and bark and so I don't get very much citruses. I can tell you that because they just completely get swallowed up by all of these other heavier notes. There's some of that waxy styrax in here as well. But I mean, it's almost like if you've ever kind of driven a supercar, like if you've ever been or been around somebody, forget driving it, but if you've ever just had a friend or something that had like a Lambo or a Ferrari or something, and they go to start it up cold, and you're there when that car starts, that thing is loud as hell. And they're loud as hell on purpose. Number one, they're loud as hell to mostly show off kind of the power under the hood, because most guys driving a Lambo or a Ferrari want people to look at them, right? So when you start that car cold, it is loud on purpose, right? Number one. Number two, I think it's loud because they want to quickly heat up the engine. So the engine is heating up quickly while in the first minute or so, while the car is kind of revving. And so when you drive, the engine isn't completely cold, right? So that's the second reason why sometimes those cars start up, but they're very loud in the opening. And the opening of this reminds me a little bit of that. It's almost like, it's almost like the opening is like starting the car and you're just hit with everything that loud, almost to the point where it shocks you. And then you get inside the car, you close it, the soft closed doors come in and close the door for you. You know, the thing hands you your seat belt. It has all the bells and whistles, right? And when you're inside, you have the soundproof cabin and all of that stuff. And so even though it's a loud ass car, when you're inside, all the luxury starts to come in. And that's how the fragrance, that's an example of the way that the fragrance very quickly changes. Nostalgia quickly changes, and you can see the artistic aspect of this fragrance. You can see that the quality of the ingredients, the creation. I have no clue who the perfumer is, but you can see that the fragrance kind of takes you on a journey, as if you're literally sitting in the passenger seat of the car going for a drive, right? And so what's interesting, though, is Nostalgia doesn't lose all of its power, okay? So it's the fragrance opens up, like I said, the most challenging part is the opening, but that's also my favorite part. And into the dry down, when the amber starts to make it a little bit softer, a little bit smoother, it's almost like you're driving the car. You start out on sports mode, and pretty soon you feel every single bump in the road. You think you're going to be on this ride with your hair blowing in the wind and everything being crazy and fast, and the sports mode is really meant for you to feel the road, right? And then all of a sudden the driver says, nope, we're going to change it to the comfort mode. And all of a sudden you start to get in a situation where it feels like you're literally just riding on a cloud. Like you went from riding in a Lambo to riding in a Rolls Royce. And that's kind of what Nostalgia goes from. It goes from that very harsh opening into that much... See, now it's already calmed down so much. It's so much softer, and all of the rough edges have been taken out. And it just becomes more of like a comfort ride. So it's like riding on a cloud. And what's interesting is you can feel the car still has the ability, like you can feel the power under the hood, right? You know that it has the potential. It has the 700 or 800 horsepower. It has the potential to push it and ramp it. And that's sort of all of the notes in the background. So you can smell the leather. You can smell the smoky birch. Like I said, giving off a little bit of that burnt oil feel. You can smell a little bit of tobacco, almost like maybe on one occasion the owner had a few too many and decided, screw it, I'm smoking a cigar in here, but that was a while ago and the cigar smoke is kind of dissipated, but it left a little bit of that smell, right? You can smell the waxy styrax in here, and it really gives it a lot of texture. So you can smell some of these notes underneath, the gasoline, the rubber, but they begin to really recede. Not like they're bass notes, because you get them right in the beginning, but like they start to become background players, like they're outside of the cabin. You're inside of the cabin, all of these other notes are outside of the cabin, right? And so it's almost like you were driving to work and you were just being an absolute maniac on the road, swerving in and out of traffic. The opening is like that, okay? Full speed, pedal to the metal, rose gold, all the way, go. And you get to the office, and all of a sudden you realize people are looking at you in the garage, so you almost pull out your driving Miss Daisy hat and you very slowly drive in. you don't want people to know what an asshole you were driving to work, right? So when you get into the parking lot of your office, you drive very calm and collected and act like this is how I drive all the time. But that's how the opening to the dry down really feels like. It's a very interesting transition. Maybe one of the most interesting transitions I think I've ever smelled in all of perfumery. And it's really because of how it goes about its transition. Some fragrances transition over hours. Some fragrances change very quickly, but it's this quick shift in tempo. It and that it sort of wasn't meant to be, but you could think of it as like a quick shift, or shifting down when you're trying to stop and kind of slowing the car down using your shift, right, instead of using the brake. There is this feel where it just becomes so much more wearable, so much more wearable. And like I said, it still feels like you can feel the power under the hood. The leather, by the way, as it continues to dry down, the leather feels slightly waxy into the dry down, but also like there's something slightly sparkly underneath, okay? So like imagine like you're looking at like a new pearl paint job on a Rolls Royce. And if you've ever seen that matte white pearl paint job on a Rolls Royce, one of my favorite colors on a Rolls Royce. I saw one in Austin a couple weeks ago, and it was absolutely just perfection. And underneath you have that sparkle on the paint, right? And now, to me, that sparkle could be a couple things when you smell this. It could be the ambergris, which, even though there's no ambergris listed, I would not be surprised if there is an ambergris note in here. Although it isn't listed, but the one that is listed is that ambrette. And so what's interesting is, if you watched my review, if you're a regular of the channel and you keep up with my content, and you watched my review from about a year ago or so from the House of Papillon, she had a fragrance called Hera. And Hera was actually made for her daughter. I wore it yesterday as my scent of the day. What an absolutely beautiful fragrance. That was made for her daughter's wedding. Go watch the Liz Moore's interview, and go watch my review on Hera. But that is maybe one of the best ambrette, which is that musk mallow I was mentioning earlier, fragrance I've ever smelled. And ambrette is a very expensive ingredient, unbelievably expensive actually. And Liz Moore's mentioned to me that in isolation, musk mallow basically smells like champagne. Like it has this champagne-like musk smell, minus the animalic side of actual musk, right? So imagine like a slightly vegetal twist on musk that is removing the animalic aspects, and it adds this unbelievable amount of texture and depth to the perfume. So if you can just imagine a much tamer take on a fragrance that has all of these interesting notes intertwined in them: the rubber, the fuel, the paint, the wood. Imagine the wood grain of the steering wheel, like I mentioned in the front. Just imagine that this steering wheel here is wood grain, right? And imagine the leather, the Corinthian leather, the high-end leather that you have in the Italian sports cars. And then just imagine the depth that ambrette, that musk, adds to it, okay? So you have the woody, the leathery, all of the crazy notes from the car, the paint, the fuel, and my biggest beef with this fragrance, the one thing that I really wish when I wear, because I love wearing this, by the way, this is like, this could easily be a little bit of a signature scent for me because it dries down so wearable. It's easy for me to wear something like this to the office or out and about or whatever. I had to go run some errands today, wore it, worked perfectly for May here in Texas, even though it has this, some might say the synthetic side of things. I've heard this fragrance compared to things like Bvlgari Black because of the rubber. I would even say Comme des Garçons Black maybe even has little bits and pieces. Comme des Garçons is probably a house that I could see a lot of people trying to compare this to. They did, I think, a Garage series of scents or something, but I have not smelled enough Comme des Garçons. That's a house I really do need to smell more. But the synthetic side of this does not bother me at all because I think they did it in a way where, it's not just an art project. This is not a museum piece, as some people say. The way that it dries down and the way it turns from that extremely challenging opening, 1 minute in, 2 to 3 minutes in, it begins to dry and change and becomes much more wearable into the dry down. And as it dries, that musk, I think, really helps fixing it to the skin. So the musk, and you still can get, like I said, a little bit of the leather, a little bit of all these other ingredients kind of playing in the background, but it becomes unbelievably smooth. Like sitting in the cabin and all of the craziness is outside of the walls. You're inside of your sports car, everything else is outside, right? And that's a little bit how this fragrance feels to me. And I absolutely love it. I think it was Armando that introduced me to this. This was a bottle that I ended up getting off of Armando. And so Nostalgia is, just look at this, by the way. That is a handwritten number. Now, this is a 24-year-old fragrance or whatever it is. 2002, it was originally put out. So, you know, it's been a while. Technically, if you go off of that 20-year time frame, this can be considered vintage. I also, like I said, I don't know if the new bottles of Nostalgia come in this. I don't think they do. I think they come in this. I don't know about changes, although I can tell you that Santa Maria Novella historically has been very good at keeping their formulas well maintained. But if you like leathery fragrances, you know, if you're into the leathers that I'm into, this is one that, even if you don't like the amber vanilla thing that it turns into, I think this is one that you have to try to smell, because the transition is so unique. I've never smelled a fragrance. Well, first of all, I've never smelled a fragrance that smells exactly like this. This is unique in that sense, but also I've never smelled a fragrance that transitions the way this one does. The way it goes from that huge hit in the opening to instantly kind of something different is such a joy to smell and get to know. And in the perfume realm, I will say that's a big rarity. So yes, and it comes with this little book, by the way, which I think is kind of cool. So let me see if I can show you without messing this up. So it's got, there you go, bottle number 220. So they're individually numbered. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if the new ones come in packaging like this, but I think this is cool. The cap, yes, the cap is light. You know, the cap is, it is what it is. I don't know exactly what this is supposed to be. It almost looks like a pop out lighter or something, but it's very good. Very good stuff. I would urge you to check this out if you get a chance. So that's my take on Nostalgia. If you've had a chance to smell it, do let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. And I'm going to try to do as many of these reviews as I can, especially on these, what I would just call forgotten fragrances. These fragrances that deserve, you know, you look this up, there's 1 or 2 reviews on YouTube. That's not fair, especially for a fragrance this artistic and unique with the ingredients like this, created the way this is. This should be a hit. But just because it's not being pushed, no one talks about it. And from my 2 cents, I want my channel to be a channel that talks about these type of scents. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have experience with Nostalgia, do let me know. As always, thank you to everyone who always watches and subscribes and comments and all that stuff. I love the interaction with you guys. We are a community. We are part of the Ram fam. So thank you to everyone for contributing and making this place what it is. I love doing these videos for you guys. So as always, thank you. Cheers, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.